The camera once again.
Yes.
James Krizan.
4.
In the booklet, it's the second candidate.
Sorry. Yes.
And if we can have James.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry.
Sure.
I got off the thing, but when you made
That's not your fault. It's my fault.
My fault.
No. She introduced herself.
Kidding. I didn't pay attention.
because I went down and some of the questions were different. Anyways.
You're good. We're back on the air, I think, or back on recording.
Okay, good. All right, thank you again, Mayor, members of City Council. We have our third candidate for interview this evening, which is our last interview. Just to repeat for the candidates' opportunity to hear, the mayor will start the questioning with the first question, and then council members will ask questions around the table with the mayor indicating which question they will ask, and the last question will then come back to the mayor to be asked. Are there any questions or anything from City Council before we get started? All right. After this interview, I'll escort the candidate back. I'll escort the candidate out. I'll come back and give just a couple closing remarks of your options or what's next for either this meeting or your meeting a week from Tuesday. So we'll conclude. Okay. Without anything more, I did offer the candidate whether the podium or the table, so he has that option covered.
Okay. We just need to make sure that the audience at home, the future audience at home, be able to pick up your voice. So be mindful of where the microphone is when you're speaking.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Mr. Krizan, we're glad that you applied and showed interest here and everything. We're going to go about 55, 60 minutes. And so you all set? You ready to go?
Sounds good.
Okay, you got water in front, right? Okay, away we go. James, we have your background materials in front of us, but would you please begin by reviewing your professional career path and career goals, and please identify what specifically draws you to want to work with the City of Lincoln Park.
Okay. So after my undergrad, I began working at the Judson Center. I started in Redford. I actually started out working in foster care. I started doing actual foster care work, moving into foster home licensing. After a few years of that, I got into a program which was called Building Community Partnerships. And that program was designed to work within communities, work with the different organizations, to try and identify, develop different resources to try and make the foster care system better. My target area was actually Wayne County outside of the city of Detroit, so most of downriver, western Wayne County. I worked with a lot of the organizations that I still see present around today, places like the Guidance Center, Wayne Metro. And during that time, I started my graduate studies at Eastern in public administration. And when I started them, I actually had an eye of staying in the nonprofit world. That was until I actually had my first class. And I fell in love with local government and began really following and getting involved in watching local governments, seeing what makes them work. And so I continued working in the nonprofit sector as I finished my studies, which when I finished, it led me to my first opportunity to be a local government manager, which was in the village of Decatur. The village of Decatur, if you don't know, is a pretty small community over in southwest Michigan, about 20 minutes southwest of Kalamazoo. I got out there, it probably was November of 2013, and I was able to hit the ground running. My first day, I actually had a council meeting, and I had committee meetings right ahead of that. So my first day there was like a 16, 17-hour day, and I loved every minute of it, right? So I spent a couple of years there, really got to get my feet wet in day-to-day operations, the long-term strategic kind of thinking, looking at the larger picture of how everybody's departments work together, how everybody's departments might work together better. Really gave me a good chance to learn even more about the nuts and bolts of local government. For budgeting, I was the one who did it from start to finish, working with the council to develop some goals for the year, working with the council to identify major projects we wanted to accomplish, and then getting into the spreadsheets and figuring out how to make it work. I spent 2.5 years there, and my family at the time, we were getting ready for our oldest son to start school, and kind of knowing the field as I do, I knew, there was potential I was going to have to move jobs at some point. I didn't want to have to move my family during those moves, and so my goal was to get back here to Southeast Michigan, where I would have the opportunity to be pretty centrally located, be able to serve communities. And so I started looking at that point, applied for the job in Royal Oak, which apparently had been open before, and they had a failed search. At the time, I wasn't looking, so it just kind of worked out perfectly that finally I was looking. At the time, they were also looking to fill the position. And so then after interviewing and ending up getting the job, I was able to come back to Southeast Michigan. We bought a house about a mile from the house we left when we went to Southwest Michigan. So it was really great. It's funny, I've left downriver twice. I keep coming back. But so in Royal Oak, I've gotten a really good opportunity to see the workings of a larger municipality. A larger municipality with a lot going on, much economic development, a lot of activity constantly, and a community that's changing, right? A community that not 10 years before I got there was in extreme financial shape, very close to receivership. I've seen how they've been able to weather the storm. I've seen decisions that have been made that have helped get them where they are today. So that leads me to where I am now. And the reason I saw back in, I think it was August, when Mr. Koppler was announced to be the selection for St. Clair Shores. And I remember sitting down with my wife, and we were actually having lunch on our way up for our annual trip up north. And we just started kicking around. I said, you know what, when that comes open, I think that's the place I kind of want to be. I grew up in Allen Park, about 600 feet from the border. I did most of my commerce in Linkin Park. It's my backyard.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Salcido, the second question.
Yes, thanks for coming. It's been a long day, I know, so nice to see you. All right, here we go. Based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for Linkin Park in the near term, and how would you approach these?
Well, I think the opportunities are huge economic development challenges here. The biggest one is the obvious, right? The Sears Plaza over there at Dixon Southfield that has been being redeveloped for, gosh, how many years now? Also the Linkin Park Plaza on Fort Street. But there's also a lot of smaller economic development opportunities. There's some smaller storefronts up and down Dix, up and down Fort Street that we've got a chance to develop. The street, Fort Park, is one of my favorite spots because there's such opportunity there. that is a perfect stretch of the city to kind of develop that offshoot from the main downtown. A lot of neighborhood business opportunity there, a lot of maybe even multifamily type housing that can create that foot traffic to get into the downtown. The challenges I see are pretty well tied with that. Things like infrastructure, right? If you don't have good, solid infrastructure, it's hard to recruit businesses. If alleys are falling apart, if roads are falling apart, delivery drivers don't want to drive there to a store. Makes it very difficult to have that store want to come to town. Also making sure that the city remains financially stable. It's been a rough time for quite a while. Most of Downriver had been in some pretty rough shape. And we're starting to see, as the communities are getting out of those tough financial times, you're starting to see those communities bouncing back more. Lincoln Park's now at that point where finances are starting to stabilize, spending's becoming prioritized a bit more, and there's a good opportunity for it to really start flourishing.
All right. Councilman Parkinson, a third question, please.
If selected as city manager, please tell us how you would approach building trust and respect of employees in the community.
Well, the first step in building trust is you can't assume you have it immediately, right? You have to take the time, let people get to know you, understand they're going to have apprehensions immediately because they don't know you. They don't know exactly where you're coming from. You can't build trust overnight, but you can ruin trust immediately. Being honest, being open, doing what you say you're going to do. If I tell somebody I'm going to call them back, you better believe I'm going to call them back. If I know it's going to be a day, maybe two before I can call them back, I will tell them it'll be 2 days, and then I'll give you a call. If you don't hear from me then, give me a call, and I will deal with it immediately. The biggest step of building trust is being available.
Councilman Higgins, the fourth question.
Please describe in detail your approach of medicinal budgeting, including the process you will be used to prioritize funding needs to community, important budget objectives, and to the elected officials and staff and community.
Okay, so the first step in creating a good municipal budget is making sure you can identify the goals of not only the community, but of the council, of the staff, creating kind of that longer term vision that everything can get tied back to. From that, then you've got to look at, obviously you can do the incrementalism where you're looking at what did we spend last year, what can we expect, what are the big things that are coming, but then you dive into those goals and objectives that you've worked out with the council, with the staff, and you start looking at how can we get there. What are the programs we need? What is the staffing level we'll need? What are the resources that we need to make this work? Because it's your job as the council to tell us where you want us to fly the plane, right? We've got to figure out how to get it there. So from there, it's working with the staff to develop their individual department budgets, figuring out everything that they need, and really trying to do good forecasting, good revenue forecasting, so that you're making sure that you don't get halfway through the year and find out, holy cow, that big grant we were banking on isn't coming, right? So the forecasting is extremely important, the goals and objectives, and then working with the staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Ross, the fifth question.
Please describe your skills in the area of fiscal stewardship, and what techniques have you followed in the past to manage government funds effectively?
I love a spreadsheet. I'm not going to lie. I am constantly playing around with pulling out revenue and expenditure reports, taking a look at where the money has gone. Are we putting the money to the programs, the services that we say we're going to? Is it costing what we expected it to cost? Is it costing less? If there's some kind of overrun or major underrun, what is the main reason for that? Is there something going on that we can address? Because if we're doing really good forecasting, we're not going to see major overruns or major underruns unless something weird is coming up. I like to do that pretty often. When I was in Decatur, I made sure monthly we did a quick sit down and looked at everything. In Royal Oak, with the budgets I manage, we do that about monthly or quarterly, just really trying to keep a good grip on it.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Councilman Kelsey, the sixth question.
Sure. What do you consider as essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council, and how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city council?
I would say there's probably two major things: communication and trust. You can't build a relationship without trust, and you can't build the trust without communication. And I think the best way to do it is finding out exactly really what makes everybody tick. The first little bit of a council manager relationship is almost a little bit like dating, right? Kind of finding out the intricacies of the relationship. What does this council person prefer as far as a communication method? What does this one prefer? You can't assume everybody's the same because everybody is individual. And it's really important to just to communicate with people where they are and how they're most comfortable. You can't. If somebody doesn't like to use email, they're not going to read your emails. If somebody doesn't like talking on the phone, they're not going to answer the phone when you call. So it's all about picking up that communication and those little intricacies of all of that. And then it's my job as a manager to work with you guys to meet the goals that you're here for. You guys are here because you love the community and you want to see what you feel is best for the community, and it's our job as staff to make it happen.
Thanks, sir. Councilman Salcido, the seventh question.
Yes. What do you consider as essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city staff? And how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city staff?
Well, what's funny is it's almost the exact same thing as what's important between a manager and the council. It's trust and communication. If a staff doesn't trust you, they're not going to be nearly as motivated to work for you. And again, it's just like I said with the council. It is that beginning bit is almost a little bit like dating, trying to find out where everybody's at, find out their goals, their vision for their long-term employment, and what they want to get out of it, because they're not just here to get a paycheck. They care for the community as well, and they're trying to do the best for it. So again, it's figuring out what works the best for everybody.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Councilman Parkinson, the eighth question.
What do you see the city manager's role in communicating with the press and the public, and how specifically do you plan to be successful in communicating with our community?
Well, communicating with the press is an important aspect of the job. Making sure the press has accurate, timely information, because that's one of the best ways still in this day and age, even though people aren't picking up an old-fashioned newspaper, they do still see stuff online. They do still see stuff on Facebook through places like the News Herald or the other local publications. The manager's role is to make sure they have that timely information, to answer any questions that they may have, be open and honest, and not try and hide anything from them. Obviously, there's times where it's more appropriate for somebody, say the mayor, to be the one making the statements, to be that focal point, that vision that you see on the news, answering the questions. But the manager has to have a good relationship with the press as well, because there are times where you need to get information out immediately. A boil water advisory, for example, any other type of public safety, public health kind of issues, you need to get information out there quickly, and if you don't have that relationship, it gets harder.
Okay, sir. Councilman Higgins, the ninth question.
Yeah. Please describe your process you would utilize to recruit and select talented staff with attention to making sure the candidate pool reflects the diversity of our community.
Well, it's recruiting staff is a very difficult thing to do right now. With unemployment being low, we're finding in municipal positions, in a lot of them at least, the application pool is really, really low. So it's important to not only do the traditional advertising, but trying to get to the areas in which you want to recruit specific candidates. Making sure that information is readily available on websites, other job posting sources, and trying to make sure that you maintain an attractive workplace for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Ross, the 10th question.
Please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
Okay. So you probably see at least once a month the city of Royal Oak ends up in the news for something goofy we've done. One example, one of the programs I run is the community art program. What we do is we put out a call for artists every year, and we basically rent art for a year from local artists, and we place them throughout the downtown and the city. One year, we selected a sculpture. It was pretty innocuous. It was pretty abstract. It was kind of a big blue box with some circles. The whole point of it, I guess, was it looked different no matter what angle you looked at it, kind of trying to get people to think about perspective. It was so big, we didn't have a whole lot of places we could place it. One such place that we had placed art before, but never had issues, was the lawn between the city hall and the library, where we also have an old veterans memorial. So we thought it would be a great idea. Let's put it there. It's pretty visible. A lot of people from the Veterans Memorial Society weren't very happy with it. I think if they would have liked the piece more, they probably would have been less unhappy. But, I'm not going to assign motives. But so for a couple art commission meetings and a couple commission meetings, we had some pretty vocal residents about it. But we also had an arts commission and a city commission that were both pretty well stuck. We're not going to move it. So after a while, we worked it out with both sides that we were going to leave it there for the remainder of the program, and that just would not be a piece that we put there again. We wouldn't put another piece there moving forward. So we just kind of came to a conclusion that it's, yes, right now you might not like it, but it's not going to be there forever.
Councilman Kelsey, the 11th question.
How would you describe your management and leadership style? Please identify both strengths and weakness related to your style.
I think in general, the management is going to be different from leadership, right? Management, I like to try and manage through the staff, build them up, make sure they have all the tools they need to succeed, and make sure I'm there to answer questions, help them develop, help them look at a bigger picture and try and put it together. From a leadership side, it's my job to help, once we've created a vision for where we're going, help everybody buy into that vision, right? And by doing that, you've got to show where you're going with it. You can't just say, this is the vision, and now you've got to do X, Y, and Z, something here on the ground floor, because most people aren't going to be able to see how those two things connect. So from the leadership side, it is about connecting each little task to the larger vision. I think the strengths of that is, of both really, is at some point you can really grow a group of people that really are there fighting for the same thing, moving in the same direction, so that as new pieces come in, they buy in immediately. One of the weaknesses of it is it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not easy.
Councilman Salcido, the 12th question.
Yes. Please describe the largest challenge the community had when you first started in one of your prior professional positions. How did you go about assessing and addressing the challenge?
When I first got to Decatur, we had just come out of a time in which, so I need to give a little context, I suppose. So the major industry for the region in Decatur is agriculture. We had a pretty large grain storage facility, grain shipment facility that had actually gone bankrupt just a little bit before I had gotten there. It ended up being bought by a company called Cargill, which is a really, really huge privately owned company out of Minnesota, and they saw that mill as a really big opportunity to expand their operations and expand their footprint in Michigan. It was right on a railway. However, that railway actually had three different at-grade crossings that went right through the town. They wanted to shut one of those crossings down because then they could build a larger track, bring in larger trains to make it more economical to ship everything. A lot of residents didn't want that. A lot of the council didn't want that because they didn't want the opportunity for public safety to not be able to get south of the railroad tracks. It took us a very long time to look at the scenario, look at the problem, look at what we could do. Took a lot of meetings until we eventually found a solution in which we built a new road through funds provided actually by Cargill. They built a new road so that we had a new railroad crossing that was actually about a mile west of the one we were going to shut down. So then there should never be an opportunity for a train to block the entire thing.
Councilman Parkinson, the 13th question.
How would you approach the development of a 3 to 5 year plan 35-year strategic plan for the city? Once established, how would you facilitate the execution of such a plan?
Well, the first step is doing an assessment, doing an environmental scan, taking a look at conditions that are going on in the community, in the larger metro region, at the state level, even nationwide, looking at economic conditions, looking at general funding concerns, looking at anything that could be going on if Marathon's deciding to expand again, if the things like the new bridge, the Gordie Howe Bridge, is going to be something that's going to play into factor there. How well Corktown starts developing once Ford fully moves in, that could potentially be a huge opportunity that you'd have to take into account. So you do that environmental scan, you take a look at everything that's going on, then you take a look internally, right? You look at what does the city as an organization do, what does the city as an organization not do that we should be doing better, what resources does the city possess? And taking all of that information to find common goals that the city, that the residents, everybody can buy into. From there, you can develop your plan. And I do think having citizen engagement in there is really important in identifying the issues, identifying the opportunities, and helping craft that plan. And then from there, once you have the roadmap, you can use it to annually set objectives that try and get you where you're going.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Higgins, the 14th question.
Community involvement is important to a city. Please describe how you would plan your personally to become more involved into the community.
Well, it's really important to find something you can be passionate about. And one of the things, actually, recently that I've started to really get passionate about is local history. And I'll preface that in that it really has started coming through my third grader. As they've been learning about local history, they've been learning a lot about like the Native American tribes from the region. They actually made a point to talk about Chief Pontiac, and he starts telling me about how there was this chief who set up a meeting to attack the fort. I was like, yeah, buddy, they happened just over there, right? So I think getting involved with like the Historical Society and getting involved in their events, I see things like the Downriver Against Narcotics that I believe the mayor is involved with. Things like that are issues that are pretty important to me and I can really see getting involved with. But there's also, a community isn't a community without community organizations, without community businesses, the churches, the schools, all of that. So trying to find ways to be involved with those different facets of the community.
Okay. Councilwoman Ross, the 15th question.
Nationally, the average city manager tenure is 4 years. If selected as our next city manager, what do you predict your tenure would be?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I'd like that to get higher. I specifically chose Linkin Park. This is the only position I've sought in 3.5 years. I foresee this being a more long-term thing. This, again, like I said earlier, this is pretty much my backyard. This is where I want to be.
Thank you.
Okay, James, how much time are we?
You've got time if any council members have another question.
Okay, we've been shortchanging Councilman Kelsey here on a regular basis. Do you have anything that you'd like to ask?
No, I guess we've been pretty good with the questions. I think I'm happy with them anyways. I'll leave it up to anybody else. I mean, to the chair, that's up to
Okay,
you.
certainly.
But
certainly.
I'm fine, thank you, though.
Well, we do have one ending thing, so
Yeah.
don't
Of
worry,
course.
don't worry too much. Is there anyone else that would like to just have this?
Just to the chair, if you don't mind, James, in regards to Royal Oak, do you see Lincoln Park in a similar footprint, or do you see development like Royal Oak has? Do you see that coming here of any sort or any time?
I think it will take a fairly slow, fairly deliberative process. It's not going to happen overnight. It really didn't happen overnight in Royal Oak. It hasn't happened overnight in other places like Ferndale. Hasn't happened overnight pretty much anywhere outside of downtown Detroit, and that's probably because of Dan Gilbert, right? Unless Lincoln Park has a Dan Gilbert hiding somewhere, I don't see it happening overnight. But doing things right, addressing infrastructure, ensuring financial stability of the city, and then selectively finding the projects that make sense. Not just going after development for development's sake, but finding the ones that are really going to bring something to the community. Trying to find those smaller scale, medium scale, and larger scale developments. Not always looking after the big box or that next restaurant chain, but developing it from within, trying to find the local businesses that could use that next kick to really get them going. Because that's what really will create wealth and really create that community business.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, in closing, if you could give us 5 minutes of why you're our best candidate and what you would bring to the city of Lincoln Park.
Well, from a professional side, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things within a municipality. I have been able to be out there digging a hole in a water main break. I have been able to be out there helping with leaf pickup. I have done planning projects. I've gone all the way up to doing the strategic plan. I routinely do the strategic planning for Royal Oak. I've seen, when I started in Decatur was in a very similar situation as you find yourself today, just stabilizing with finances, just finally getting to the point where it's okay to start spending some money on infrastructure, on different projects, on park improvements, on things like that. So I've been able to see a couple different sides there. In Royal Oak, I've kind of got in just after that next step, right? Right as I was getting into Royal Oak is when you really started seeing a lot of these developments and the city really getting on a path of total kind of supercharged. And I've been able to see how decisions made 10 years prior have affected where that city is today. So it's been able to give me a good idea of that long-range vision. I spend all my non-working time basically doing hockey stuff, and I've become the president of the Allen Park Hockey Association, so I understand also from your side a little bit of trying to get consensus among a board, trying to work with people with varying different interests. And also I understand those pressures in my role as a commissioner on the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission with the state. And personally, again, this is my backyard. I remember places that are still here, that are no longer here. I was actually having a lot of fun driving around with Mr. Zek and the police chief this morning, just kind of reminiscing about some of these old places and seeing how the city's changed and seeing how it is right on the cusp. It is ready for that next step. And you see this next step happening all around. Allen Park has had crazy development up on Southfield lately. Southgate has been doing pretty well lately. Wyandotte has that really huge development project that should be happening soon at the old post office. There's not a whole lot of other spaces left. This is it. This is the next one. And I would love to be able to be part of that, and to help guide it to the next level.
Okay, James, thank you. Thank you for your interest. This is the last interview, so we've had all three. Sorry for a little bit of the disruption. One of our council members slightly ill, but
Totally fine. That's how it goes in municipal government. I was just talking earlier today. It's like you start the day with a plan, you may as well throw it out because it's going to change.
That's true.
pretty close to that. So,
That's true.
yep, okay.
Excuse me.
I'm coughing too.
When would you think, John, that the videos for this would be start?
If you'd like them to start tomorrow, we'll start them tomorrow. This is your call. Donna,
Doesn't necessarily have to be tomorrow, but I think, and we'll go into that in just a second. James?
Hello? Okay. Well, thank you very much for hosting the candidates this evening. As you know, the meeting was recorded this evening, so you can certainly go back and revisit the interviews. At this point, it's totally in the hands of the mayor and city council as your next step. You could choose to have some discussions this evening, but certainly I could understand if you wanted to place it on your agenda for next Tuesday's meeting, a week from tomorrow, particularly with a member that was not present for the rest of the final interview. That probably would be prudent. At that meeting, I would help, if you wish, facilitate a discussion of the candidates. You will ultimately have three options. You will decide that a majority of you are in favor of a single candidate with a secondary backup if you want to present in that way. Or you can say the candidates were all really well-qualified individuals, but not a fit for Linkin Park, and we would continue working with you until you found a candidate that meets your needs. Or you defer again and ask for more information from myself or the candidates. So those are kind of the three options you'll have at your next meeting. I would encourage you to keep your score sheets, keep your interview notes, and bring them back to that meeting. That will be important as we facilitate that discussion. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, I would think that we would hold off until the next Tuesday, or whatever Tuesday meeting that's going to be, since Council President Breeding did have to leave. And plus, that'll give all of us an opportunity to look at all the candidates, having seen all three at that time to do. And I think that we would come forward on Tuesday with should be able to reach a decision. I would think.
Then I'd look forward to joining you a week from Tuesday.
Okay. Does anybody have anything contrary to that? Or
All right. No, through the chair, I was just going to ask, is it going to be an agenda item, or is it going to be a study session?
Will it be? It'll be an action item.
An action item, okay.
We'll lead off the night with
Okay.
it. I don't think anything's more important than that just yet.
you have a study session set for the sign ordinance
We do,
at
that's
6:30,
right.
so.
We do. And then I have a question, Your Honor.
Sure.
Just curious if we had any comment cards.
You only had one comment card, and I will make sure you get a copy of it, but it was a single name on it of who they preferred. I'll make sure you get it, but that was the only one comment card we received.
Okay.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I've been through this before, sitting at the table. It's rather interesting to be at this point in my working career and be listening and looking at three very qualified people. But I think what I would like to point out about the process is the consultant you chose, the company, and I know he's in the room, so I'm not trying to flatter him or his company, but he developed some really good questions. And the way you asked them and the way three candidates fielded them, you could just tell by the looks on their faces, because I was thinking about how would I answer that if I was looking for work. But I could tell by the look on their faces that they were seeing him for the first time. There was no, they never saw the questions before. They could anticipate what you might ask, but they did not see the questions until tonight. And that they were really listening to the question, and they were trying to formulate an answer that was succinct, but also brought out some of the things that they wanted you to know about them. And James did a really fine job. And he worked really well with the staff, particularly Jennifer and Justina and Lisa, myself, as well as with, the other staff that kibitzed their thoughts to him. And so I think that it was one of those evenings where, and perhaps you'll go home and think, oh, I should have asked this or I should have asked that. But I think you'll probably go home and say, we got a real good look at these three. And if you want more information from him, he'll get it for you. But I think you have some good feedback to work with based on these questions. And I know you all thought about them, and you made some comments about them, so they reflected what you wanted, and we weren't giving you questions to work with that really weren't on point for you. I mean, they all talked about unions, they all talked about development, they all talked about strategic planning, they all talked about their goals and their passions, and so you got your money's worth tonight. I'll stop, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you, James. That was for all your help. Does anyone have anything else that they wish to add? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Clerk, call the roll.
Councilperson Salcido,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Kelsey,
Yes.
Parkinson,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
and Mayor Carnes.
Yes. There is a